Hello and welcome to today's video. In today's video, I want to talk to you about the television series Battlestar Galactica. The premise of this series, Battlestar Galactica, was really quite dark. It was about humans trying to survive an apocalyptic attack on their civilization and going on a journey to find a new home. And so it presents a view of decision making at a time of existential crisis, where every choice matters and where the humans are constantly under pressure. And so because of that, I think it's a really rich source for thinking about crisis decision making. Shot using handheld cameras in order to get a documentary feel, many episodes of Battlestar Galactica cover pretty short periods of time. As a young man, the creator of Battlestar Galactica, Ronald D. Moore, had spent time on a US destroyer, and so he had the feel for the Navy way of doing things, and he envisaged the Battlestar Galactica as a big aircraft carrier in space. But Moore thought about a human society that had run up against the limits of its interface with technology, that had retreated from the technology that it had created. In this world, the humans had created artificial intelligence that had turned against them. And so, on the aged Battlestar Galactica, computers are unnetworked and slow, and phones have cords attached to them. The humans in this universe are far from the ideal types that Gene Roddenberry envisaged in Star Trek. The executive officer of the ship, Colonel Tai, is a drunk who would have washed out of the service entirely if it wasn't for his friendship with the commander of the Galactica, Adama. The Secretary of Education, Laura Roslin, is elevated to the presidency when everyone above her in the line of succession is killed in the apocalyptic attack on the humans. As the series begins, she's just been diagnosed with cancer. It consumes her thoughts, even with all the billions of deaths that are happening around her. With the character of Roslin, Moore wanted to get viewers to think about the US president at the time the series was made, George W. Bush. Leaders in the position of Bush or Roslin, Moore said, have the fate of the human race hanging on their shoulders, and they're going to experience a profound change as they face this crisis. They're going to look at the world through different eyes, and certainly George W. Bush, Moore said, as he faced the 9/11 crisis, underwent this profound change. The 9/11 attack was the seminal moment in the man's presidency and the seminal moment in his life, and he changed. And I think you can argue about the reasons for that. Was it a good change or was it a bad change? But on a human level, the change happened. Laura Roslin's early decisions carry profound resonances with those decisions that were made by US leaders on 9/11. While the attack is still underway, she has to make sense of the situation. She does so more effectively than Adama, the most senior surviving military figure who wants to launch a futile counterattack. Roslin, the civilian, accurately appraises the situation. I don't know why I have to keep telling you this, she says to Adama, but the war is over and we lost. Her leadership in convincing Adama to run rather than to fight allows a rump remnant of human civilization, 50,000 people or so, to survive. Adama himself is an unusual screen hero, on the verge of retirement, and as the series begins, not particularly senior in the fleet in which he serves. His private life is painful. His son, Zach, died in a flight accident, and his surviving son, Lee, blames him for the death. The two are estranged and struggle to establish a relationship amidst the fight to survive. So this combination of thoroughly human characters trying to operate amidst constant existential crises, combined with a documentary feel and realistic, grimy, dirty, naval-looking sets, lent a visceral immediacy to this science fiction show. Indeed, the first episode of the series, called 33, may be the most compelling, presentation of leaders making decisions in crises in recent television history. Most of the cast and crew would cite this episode 33 as the most profound that they worked on. As the camera focuses through rough, jerky moments, we find the Battlestar crew and their surrounding fleet having gone without rest for 4 days. The Cylon enemy are relentless in their pursuit. They reappear every 33 minutes, forcing the refugee fleet to perform constant faster-than-light jumps, hopscotching from one point in space to another, searching for some safety. In theory, each jump is untraceable, and yet the Cylons find them every 33 minutes with mechanical regularity. Why do the Cylons come every 33 minutes? Asks one of the exhausted crew working on Galactica's fighters, trying to keep them operational. Why not every 34 minutes? Or every 35 minutes? No one knows, and the mystery adds to the creeping horror. True to the nature of Crisis, the actual mechanics of just keeping things going prove to be almost as deadly as the enemy themselves. On the Galactica bridge, crew members fall asleep and make mistakes, losing concentration at critical moments. Jumping away from the Cylons for the 238th time in a row, Lieutenant Dwala incorrectly logs as present the passenger liner Olympic Carrier, only to immediately retract the report. The Olympic Carrier, with 1,345 souls on board, is missing, perhaps left behind at the mercy of the Cylons. Adama's son, Lee, commander of Galactica's fighter squadrons, has to dose his pilots up with stimulant drugs in order to keep them flying. These drugs are both help and hindrance, keeping the pilots awake, but dampening their reaction times and other skills. These people in this crisis are so exhausted, they're making so many mistakes, that they may kill themselves without the Cylons having to do anything. When we make mistakes, Adama tells his crew, people die. And there aren't that many of us left. The fleet jumps again, and mysteriously this time, the Cylons do not reappear. 45 minutes pass. An exhausted Roslin confers with Adama over the telephone, holding the receiver to her ear and twirling the cord in her fingers. Was it something you did? Something different this cycle? She asks. Adama has no answer, staying silent on the other end of the phone for so long that Roslin wonders whether he's fallen asleep. The president and the head of the military decide to relax their guard for a while to allow their people to get some desperately needed rest. A combat air patrol of Lee Adama and daredevil pilot Starbuck is established. The pilots marvel at the scratchy, surreal alertness brought to them by the drugs they've taken to stay awake. It feels like ants are crawling behind my eyes, one of them says. Suddenly, the Olympic Carrier reappears, squawking recognition codes. Identify that ship, Adama bellows. The situation does not seem right to the old warhorse. How did they escape the Cylons? Starbuck and Apollo can't get a clear explanation from the captain of the Olympic Carrier. They resort to flashlight Morse code and fire warning shots across the Olympic Carrier's bow. Radiological alarm, Dwala reports on board the Galactica. The Olympic Carrier has nuclear material on board, and it's bearing down on the human fleet. Signs of movement are glimpsed behind the drawn curtains of the economy-class fuselage of the Olympic Carrier. 1,345 souls aboard. On 9/11, Vice President Dick Cheney, in command at an underground bunker at the White House, was told that there were several passenger liners believed to have been hijacked. He gave the orders to shoot them down. Here, Roslin and Adama face the same dilemma. Do you shoot down a civilian airliner if you think it might be about to be used as a missile by an enemy group? Madame President, Adama says, we have to take that ship down. Roslin has a whiteboard in her cabin on which she writes with a black marker the number of remaining survivors amongst the human fleet. Every time the fleet is attacked, she's pained by having to erase the number and write in a new, lower one. But there's no time to talk through this situation. At this point, it's them or us, Adama says. The Olympic Carrier bears down on the fleet. Do it, Roslin whispers.
Destroy the Olympic Carrier and return to Galactica. It's a civilian ship.
Yeah, a civilian ship with nukes. I don't see anybody in there. Do you?
The Cylons will be here any second. If we're gonna do this, let's just do it. Starbuck, form up with me. We'll make one pass from astern.
Lee, what if you're wrong? Lee, come on. Lee!
Okay, fire on my mark.
No frackin' way, Lee.
Lee!
Come on!
Starbuck will not fire. No way, Lee, she says. If the pilots won't pull the trigger, the president's anguished, borderline call will make no difference. Lee begins to fire, and Starbuck does too, pulling the trigger out of solidarity with her friend, whom she won't allow to bear the burden alone. The Olympic carrier, a civilian airliner, explodes. The Cylons don't reappear. Maybe they were tracking the Olympic carrier, but the humans will never know. They shot down the ship, and they have no way to get a definitive answer. At least you know you made the right choice, an aide says to the exhausted president. The right choice, she repeats. And so, in this episode of Battlestar Galactica, and I would say in the series as a whole, you have all of the elements of crisis decision making. Incomplete information, people who are trying to make the best decision they can, but they're doing so under tremendous pressure, bearing the burden of their own past experiences, working within their own limits and their own peculiarities as people. In the end, Roslin and Adama don't know if they made the best decision. The crisis happened only once, they did the best they could. And that too, I think, is true to the nature of decision-making in international crises. This is just one episode of this show that I picked out to dramatise leadership and decision-making in crisis. But really every week of that show, given the premise, was about that subject. I couldn't recommend it to you more.